Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. My very good friends, students, mentors, peers, learners, teachers, and of course, my encouragers who have been encouraging me through their subscription, their feedback, their likes on the channel. And the background is that while taking the opportunity of this lockdown and at the same time the holy month of the Ramadan, while utilizing the time which is available, a series of lectures have been started on different thematic areas relating to mostly the engineers, project managers, developers, and other professionals. So far, we have been able to mainly present the lectures on leadership, and then we leadership theories, and then we started with its second series on the project management, which was comprised of almost 20 or 22 lectures. And now today we are starting the environmental design series, in which the first major series of the lectures is environmental impact assessment. Before formal start of the lecture, I would like to recite a few verses from the Holy Quran. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر صدق الله العظيم. The environmental impact assessment series was selected mainly due to the fact that in the development sector, we are always faced with the challenges of the sustainable development. And the sustainable development mainly says that the development must be ensured, but not at the cost of the natural environment. So therefore, the development is essential for the present generations, but without compromising the future generations to come. And as a matter of fact, all the development projects, one way or the other, have some on the other way have some different level of impacts on the environment, whether it is natural environment, it is socioeconomic environment, or it is built environment. So in all these forms of environment, we have some impacts from the developments. And the objective of the environmental impact assessment is, first of all, to see that what will be the level of these impacts of the new developments on the environment, whether that is different aspects of environment like lithosphere, hydrosphere, and atmosphere. And then what interventions can be made to make the impact more and more positive, in the sense that it can be mitigated, if ideally not to the zero level, but it should be brought to the minimum level. Or in worst case, we can defer the project, or we can think of redesigning the projects or replanning the project. So these are, some of the major challenges in the development projects, that we have a very high level of impacts in some projects. Sometimes these are mild, and sometimes it may be very low level of impacts. And we would try to see that these impacts can be easily digested and absorbed by the environment. So this was basically And why did I select this uh, process? Because I believe that environmental impact assessment is one of the most important area for the engineers, designers, architects, planners, urban designers, policy makers, and a large variety of the audience who are involved in the public policy, in the public administration, in the design, in the engineering, and even the media personnel can also benefit from this series of lectures. Now, the EIA, Environmental Impact Assessment, so Barry Sadler argues that environmental impact assessment is one of the most successful policy innovations of the 20th century. Before the mid of the last century, or towards the end of the last century, when the uh, environmentalist groups created a lot of environmental awareness in the society, and when the very fast industrialization and the commercialization in the post-globalized world led to the deterioration of the environment to greater extent. So we could see the number of environmental movements like Greenpeace movement, Earth movement, and there are a lot of almost more than 100 different types of movements occurred in different parts of the world. And these movements created a kind of awareness and arousals in the people towards the environmental degradation. And later on, the policymakers decided to bring a policy document and a process in the development project so that the impact of these developments on the environment can be assessed well before the project is approved. And once the project is approved, then there must be a monitoring process so that these environmental parameters which have been identified in the projects can be monitored, and uh, it can be maintained, and if there is any impact, it can be mitigated through different policies and different interventions. Now, the environmental impact assessment EIA is basically a planning tool that is now generally regarded as an integral component of sound decision making. And we discussed this, that in all kind of decision making now, it is very important to have the environmental impact assessment, and even the Planning Commission of Pakistan, in majority of the projects now undertakes the EIA by the client through the consultants to ensure that there is no major environmental impact of the new projects and development projects. And if there is any environmental impact, then what preventive measures and what mitigative measures have been deployed in the projects and after the project so that the impacts are minimized. So it's a planning tool which has both an information gathering and a decision making. In one place, the EIA serves as a tool for collection of the primary data and also the baseline data about the various environmental parameters. And then based on the prediction of impacts, the prediction model of impact, modeling of impact then takes the appropriate decision of any change in the project. Sometimes even the project is rejected, even the project is replaced by another project, and sometimes some changes are made, maybe in the alignment of the route, and maybe in the other kinds of technical and environmental parameters which can lead to the new project. So both the data collection as well as the decision-making component with an objective basis for granting or denying approval for our proposed developmental projects. So this whole process is done for the policy decision whether the new project must be approved or it may be deferred for some additional information, or it may be rejected with the request to bring a new internet project. Now the world has become really very sensitive about the environmental degradation, and a lot of projects are now being scrapped due to the poor environmental impacts of these projects. Now, the purpose of the assessment is, so the impact assessment or environmental assessment or environmental impact assessment is one way, one are the same thing. The main objective is to support the goals of environmental protection. So this is the topmost goal, because we will discuss later that there are always strategic goals of the nation and of the world at global level to protect the environment for a sustainable development. And this has become really more important after the 2015, when the Sustainable Development Goals have been approved and agreed by the member states of the United Nations. Secondly, to integrate environmental protection in economic decisions at the earliest stage. This is again very important, because if any environmental degradation which can take place at the later stage of the project can jeopardize the project, and it can sometimes make the project sick. The people may in the environmentalist groups may later on object these projects when the project is in the mid of its execution. So it creates a lot of awareness in the beginning, and any decision which is required in the planning which is taken. Uh, Thirdly, it predict or project the environmental parameters in terms of social, economic, and cultural consequences. Because we will discuss later the components of the environmental assessment, that the new project may have impacts on the environment, maybe the social systems, maybe the economic, socio-economic conditions of the area, and maybe the cultural consequences. So we try to assess these consequences or impacts, and then we also try to mitigate these impacts through better assessment, and finally provided a public involvement, which is really very important component of the environmental assessment, that the public, the society, which is the custodian and the owner of the environment, is involved in the process of this environmental assessment. And if there is any reservations or concern of the public, they are taken into account. And we also involve the government and the government agencies to review the project. So the objectives of the environmental impact assessment are really very holistic. And the main objective is to save the environment, but at the same time also ensuring the development to move forward, but without or very limited or minimal impacts on the environment. Now, when we talk about the strategic actions which require the environment is a very important. For example, the legislative changes have uh, taken place. The national development plans are now developed around the environmental impacts. The economic policies, regional or global, are having the development plans. The growth triangle is having now high concern for the environment. Similarly, the integrated plans, no spatial and spatial, non-spatial and spatial developments also require strategic thinking about the environment. Similarly, the sectoral policies in plans, local or national or regional, also take into account specific resource and then policy in place to achieve the social. And so all these are really very important, and we call it a strategic environmental assessment. Is basically a broader picture of the environmental assessment of any national or regional development on the various aspects of the environment. And definitely all the major decisions of policy making on national level, regional and national level will take into account the strategic environmental impact assessment, that is called C. So the C, which is basically on a regional level, on a bigger, not on a project level, this is basically the strategic, and we will discuss this in more detail towards the end of this series of EIA, that what we need to have the environmental baseline for the entire country or region, and then what are the strategic actions and what will be the impact of the different kinds of projects, and then we predict, evaluate, and mitigate. So this is basically the strategic environmental assessment is a bigger picture assessment of the environmental impacts of at the regional or national or local level because of the new projects. So the strategic environmental assessment incorporates the environmental consideration into policies, plans, and programs. So here we are not talking only of a specific project, and certainly the EIA then will be part of the C. In the C, we are looking at the bigger picture, and that bigger picture is mostly related to the policies, the plans, and programs. This sometimes referred to as strategic environmental impact assessment. CRSEIA is more or less the same thing, and it was basically coined by the European Union uh, back in 20th century when the regional development was taken into account and the policies were developed on the European Union countries. So environment was taken at the top as an agenda, and the main objective was to develop a strategic environmental assessment uh, which can be then complied by the member states of the European Union in their policies, plans, and programs. And certainly under these programs, the different projects which will be conceived will have these considerations. For the most part, and C is conducted before a corresponding EIA is undertaken, so that is very obvious that C is a larger picture, whereas the EIA is a smaller part of that picture. The concept of strategic assessment originated from regional development land use planning in the development world in 1981. The Youth Housing and Urban Development Department published the Area-Wide Impact Assessment Guidebook, and that was, as a matter of fact, the first strategic environmental assessment. Now, the EIA, which is a tool which is used to identify the environmental, social, and economic impacts of the projects prior to the decision making, we discussed that we normally take into account the three important components of the sustainable development, that is environmental, social, and economic impacts of the new projects. And then it predicts to see that at the early stage of design, we try to see the impacts and how can these impacts can be reduced, their impacts can be reduced. And that is normally called the mitigation. And the projects are shaped in a way that the environment is better saved. By using the EIA, both environmental and economic benefits can be achieved. We can reduce the cost and the time of the project. We can avoid the litigations. We can avoid the resistance from the local sponsors, the local community, from the media and the stakeholders, and avoid treatment, cleanup costs, and impacts of laws and regulations. Now, there is a generic process in the EIA that first of all, we try to see that whether the project is having the environmental impacts or not. So normally we call that a scoping, that we have to decide that I go to the next slide, which will be more in detail. Sorry. The first one is screening, and I'm sorry, in the previous slide we had some problem in the order. That first of all, you screen the project, and we have three kinds of normally in Pakistan we have three kinds of projects. That the projects which altogether do not need any kind of environmental studies, and then we have small level of study, and then there we have complete initial environmental assessment or examination, IEE, and then we have the EIA. So if the project is, and these list of different projects are given by the Environmental Protection Agency of Pakistan, and then based on that we can decide that what level of the environmental assessment is required for a specific project. But certainly if the project is not having any environmental impacts, then it may be in the list which does not require any kind of study. Once we decide that what particular kind of study would be required, then we try to scope the project. And the scoping means that we may not be in a position to study all the impacts, because the new project may bring more than 100 impacts, but we then try to identify the major impacts which will be considered during the study, and that is called the scoping, that which impacts or issues will be considered, and what can be the project actions which can lead to the environmental impacts, and then what are the different environmental baseline. This is very important because most of the time we can predict the impacts one way or the other way with the help of different tools and methods we will discuss later on. But the more important and the most challenging question is that do we have the data about the present environmental parameters of our interest, and normally that is called baseline. Now, the existence of this baseline and environmental baseline is really a big challenge because in most of the cases, we don't have a reliable baseline data because unless we don't have a baseline data, we cannot then see that what can be the impacts. And then once we have the baseline data, then we try to see that what can be the key impacts, and all these are then covered in the scoping. Once we identify the baseline data and we also identify the key impacts, then we try to predict these impacts. For example, if we are going to construct a steel mill in the area which is supposed to create air pollution, for example, then we would need to have the present level of the air pollution in that particular area within certain specified radius of year, and that is really very important. So unless we don't have that baseline data of the air pollution in that area, the seasonal variation, and the spatial and temporal variation of the air pollution, we may not be able to predict. So the second or the third step is to predict that we would use different prediction tools. There are a lot of simulation models now. There are mathematical equations. There are some different methods we are using for predicting the impacts of these various environmental on the various environmental parameters. And once this is done and the mitigation, once the impacts are assessed, then we try to also give the mitigation measures, and this mitigation measures together are then presented in the form of a report, and this report is then shared with the public through public consultation, and this public consultation, then we review the environmental statement or report, and then we finally make the decision that whether to bring some changes in the project. We may share the concern of the public with the project's proponents, and then we may sometimes reject the project, and we may request the sponsor or the proponent of the project to bring an alternate project. So there can be three, that it is deferred for some additional information, it is accepted with some minor further improvement, and it may be rejected based on the apprehensions of the policymakers. And once the EIA is approved, the most important is environmental monitoring, which unfortunately is one of the most neglected part. We do have a very good EIA studies in the shelves, but unfortunately the environmental monitoring is very poor in the countries like Pakistan, and even the EIA which is approved one way or the other way is also not followed, and there is no proper mechanism in the project which can assess the environmental impacts and the mitigations measures which have been agreed by the sponsor and by the funding agency. And definitely then we need to have some audits, third-party validations, third-party audits, environmental audits. So this gives us a very flow chart or step-by-step approach that we identify the project, we develop the project proposal, then the project is sent for screening. There might be EIA or no EIA, there might be some initial environmental examination, and that initial environmental examination may tell us that EIA is required or not, and then we go for scoping, which would identify the nature of impacts. and then we assess these impacts. And while we are predicting or assessing these impacts, we also come up with the mitigations measures, and then it is reviewed. And at the same time, this whole process is shared with the public through their involvement, and then the decision is made either the project is not improved, it is recommended for redesign and resubmittal, or it may be approved and then it goes to the monitoring. And there are some days or months which are given by the Environmental Protection Agency of Pakistan, the minimum period which will be taken in this decision. Now, the environmental impacts may be of different type and nature. For example, that may be biophysical or maybe socioeconomic. The significance may be high, medium, or low, depending on the nature of impacts. For example, sometimes it may be small and temporary during the construction period only, and once the construction is completed, then the normal environment may prevail. The extent is another issue, that whether the environmental impact would be limited to a local environment, or it would also go to the other parts of the country or of the region. This is really very important when we are doing the projects on the boundary or transboundary environment. The timing is also very important because sometimes the impacts are not very immediate, but it may create the impacts at later stage. For example, the exposure of the people to the heavy metals and chemicals may create the carcinogenic or cancer-related things after 30 years. Similarly, the exhaust fumes from the chemicals or chemical refineries can also bring some changes in the long run. So the timing is also, or the duration is also very important. Now, the duration is another impact that, for example, it may be for a short term, like we discussed, the construction noise, or it may be a permanent impact, like relocation of the village or construction of steel mill near the housing area, or construction of the airport near the housing area. Another is the uncertainty that this is really very important in case of high risky projects, where the consequences of the impacts cannot be certain or cannot be predicted realistically. And then the reversibility, these are the properties. Some of the impacts may reverse after a certain period of time, maybe 10 years, 15 years, or 50 years. For example, the rehabilitation following the decommissioning. Other may be irreversible, like the CO2 emissions from the vehicles, which is creating the global warming, which is also depleting the ozone layers, and so on. Now, why do we need to have we discussed some of the benefits in the earlier stage, that if we do have the EIA in the beginning, we will have good policy making, we will bring the people on board, we will not have delays in the project at a later stage, the people would not be objecting the project once they come to the impacts at a later stage. So it facilitates the informed decision making and a clear and dispassionate analysis of the effects and consequences. Preemption of the early withdrawal of unsound proposal. If the project is not environment friendly and is going to create a very big impact on the environment, then certainly such kind of projects can be withdrawn at the early stage, and it will not involve too many costs and unnecessary delays. Assisting the selection of alternatives. Certainly, if we go for the analysis, we then suggest different alternatives for the same project, which can be more environmentally friendly. It influences both project selection and design by screening out environmentally unsound projects. We discussed this, and we also try to identify the mitigation measures for the negative impacts of the projects. It guides the formal approval. We will discuss the approval process which has been adopted by the Government of Pakistan, by the Environmental Protection Agency. It results in best practices, which involve the reduction and mitigation of adverse effects. It serves an adaptive organizational learning process in which the lessons of experience are feedback into policy, institutional, and project design enhancement of positive aspects. So we try to enhance the positive aspects of the project, and we try to develop the institutional framework which can then help to have that project. Incorporate stakeholder analysis at very early stage, and this timely analysis of the stakeholder helps to have a good project management also and monitoring also. So the mitigation of negative environmental and social impacts are taken into account in the early stage of the project development. Some of the issues which sometimes are failures of the EIA process, for example, the alternatives uh, are not considered to the fullest uh, extent. For example, the Japan case on Moodle was not, and we will discuss this sometime later. Difficult to develop effective mitigations measures, though we identify the impacts, but the mitigations are not effective. Though in the books we commit a very large number of mitigations measures, but unfortunately, in most of the cases, we have observed that these measures are not very effective, and in the long run, the project impacts are continuing and multiplying. Cumulative impacts often ignored or unquantified. We normally talk about the immediate impact, but in the long term, cumulative impacts are not measured by the projects. Development agencies sometimes confused about the purpose of EIS, just bureaucratic red tape or the project. This is another very big issue that even the politicians uh, in the country are also not very supportive of the EIA process, and normally they believe that this is creating a red tapeism or impediments to the execution of the project. And even in the more very important national projects, the EIA is not considered, mainly because of the non-support from the political governments and even from the bureaucracy. So this is a question which we need to answer, and certainly we need to take the people on board that EIA is required to save the environment. Detailed environmental statements sometimes seen as an itself tendency to produce litigation-proof document. This is another very important aspect, that most of the time the impacts which are identified in the environmental report or EIA statement is also a base for the litigation by the community, by the public. So the wording of the environmental statement needs to be very carefully drafted, and there are certainly some experts who draft such kind of statements. And then tendency to consult with public only after these. This is another very important issue, that in most of the cases, the government has already decided to start with the project, and the project is then shared with the public at a very belated stage. And this public participation or involvement seems more to be a formality, and this is not reactive. This is mostly reactive and not interactive. That the public involvement is not part to improve the project design, rather they are involved at a later stage when they react to the project. The benefits are many. We discussed that it can improve and modify the projects. It can ensure resources effectively and efficiently. It can ensure the incorporation of social and health aspects. It helps the identification of measures for monitoring and managing. We discussed in quite detail. This is telling us the story in Pakistan, that we have the environmental impact assessment by the Environmental Protection Agency. We have the screening through the initial environmental, and again, if there is no EIA required, then if it is required, then we go to scoping, scoping, and we develop. This scoping is normally done in the pre-feasibility or PC2 stage, and once we go for the feasibility study, then we also predict the production and mitigations, and then we prepare the environmental impact statement or report, and then we develop the private. And while we are doing this, we go for the public information and consultation, and then it is sent to the regulatory body. and the regulatory body then review it, and finally it is approved or deferred depending on the nature of decision. And once it is done, then we go to the environmental monitoring process, and at the same time we carry the environmental audits to assess the EIA process. This is the EPA 2005, the Pakistan Environmental Protection Act, National Environmental Protection Act, which was I think promulgated back in 1990 or 89. This is showing that the project proposal is received. We have 3 schedules. In the one schedule, in the screening process, we have schedule 2 where the EIA is required, and schedule 1 projects are those projects where only the initial environmental examination is sufficient, and schedule 3 are the projects which do not require any kind of environmental assessment. And then we go to the next stages. For example, we go to the scoping and baseline assessment, and then impact analysis, then mitigations measures, then environmental management plan, and then AIA report is prepared, and this is submitted for review. And at the same time, we have the public consultation with this report, and the public is kept involved in the whole process, ideally or theoretically. And then the decisions are made either to not approve the project, refer it to design and resubmittal, or it is approved, and we are more interested to see the environmental monitoring and management plan with the client. This is telling us just the hierarchy that the Director General is having Director Legal Enforcement Admin, there is EIA and monitoring, and there is a Director Lab in National Environmental Quality Standards. Some of the issues which we have witnessed based on the literature review, that the fundamental problem is the non-availability of reliable baseline data and the lack of coordination and cooperation. This is really very important, and for this we need to have the National Environmental Database with coordination of R&D organization, nationwide programs of linking universities, GIS and GPS-based research, and also the environmental data to be recorded with the NADRA. The second problem is the EIA procedure and guidelines are not properly disseminated and clearly understood. This is another issue. That the departments are not very clear, and the proponents of the project and the developers. So this is the revision of EIA procedure and streamlining the guidelines in the local and indigenous context is very important. Dissemination of the environmental procedure not only on the internet but also through other means. Lack of institutional capacity, that the institutional capacity to implement the EIA and then monitor is very limited. And now when the environment has become the domain of the provinces, I'm afraid that the environmental impact assessment and environmental planning has become really a very difficult thing for the federal government to control. And for this, we need to develop the Environmental Protection Agency at the provincial level, their capacity, and the review of their reports, economic and social appraisal of EIA, and all these are really very important to develop the. Similarly, the implementation is very weak. The public participation is very far informal, and it is not according to the spirit of the EIA. And in most of the cases, this is I have already submitted that this is more treated like a formality. The consultancy services can help, but the majority of the consultant also don't have much capacity because most of them are not the environmental specialists or the EI specialists, and then there are a lack of resources in the projects with the government to deal with the impacts of the various developmental activities. Now the EIA should have integrity, that it should be conforming to the global and national good practices and standards. For example, if we are talking about the pollution level in the environment, then the national environmental quality standards must be followed, and it must have some good practice. Similarly, the case with the noise pollution, air pollution, water pollution. So all these standards which are in line with the WHO, our Global Environmental Protection Agency, it should be followed. The utility that the EIA should not be just a book which the people would like to shelf. It should have a credible information which can be useful for decision making by the policy makers and the project approving authorities. The sustainability that it should have an environmental sound development of environment and sustainability. It should have well founded legislative base that all the contemporary national and international laws should be taken into account while analyzing the impacts. The procedural control should be there. The public involvement should be incentivized, and the people should be encouraged to different means to be involved in the environmental assessment process. And the problem decision orientation should be there. And if there is any problems which have been pointed out by the proponents, by the public, or by the approving authority, it should be taken into account, and there should be a regular follow-up and feedback on the environmental assessment. Now, ideally, the EIA must be undertaken at the very early stage, is possible, maybe at the conceptualization stage of the project, with the clear term of reference, and the roles and procedure must be very clearly defined, and the public must be given appropriate opportunity to be involved. We expect that once the EIA is done, we have a very accurate and appropriate information. We have a very credible document of the environmental statement, our EIA report, and it should provide us the confidence for better decision making. Now, there can be some cost of the environmental impact assessment and mitigation measures, but in most of the cases, it has been observed that this is a very small amount, maybe less than 1% in majority of the projects, but it saves a lot of environmental degradation. For example, the cost of a road project would include the cost of labor and material used in construction, as well as other costs such as the loss of parkland and homes, pollution, disruption to the neighborhood, or the loss of peace and quiet. The benefits of such project might include time saved for motorists, increase predictability of the journey time, and increase accessibility to the particular location. Between 60 and 90% of the cost of project EIAs incurred in carrying out the environmental studies. This is based on a case study of about, I think, 20 or 25 projects in the United Kingdom. And this case study revealed that a majority of the money is spent on the development of the baseline data, because in most of the cases, the existing baseline data is either not sufficient or it is not existing. The second, the preliminary study conducted in advance of the formal EIA are also significant part of the developer overall design cost, although these will usually be incurred whether or not EIA is required. So most of the data which we collect in the EIA helps the design of the project also. So one way or the other way, it is not wasted. We do EIA or not, we need this kind of data. For example, we need the topographic survey. We need to have the runoff survey. So all these surveys are required, and which are also part of the EIA. The cost of reviewing the EIA and the reaching a decision on whether or not the project should be proceeded falls chiefly on the competent authority with some input from statutory consultants. For 60% of the project examined, EIA cost amounting to less than 0.5% of the overall capital cost. So this is very important, that in most of the project of general range, we could see that the EIA cost, including the assessment as well as the mitigation cost, is not more than 1%. It may be in controversial projects in sensitive environment, may have some more cost of litigation and cost of extensive improvement of the environment. Key environmental issues had been identified in 94% of the cases which were studied in this research. The quality of the project design had been improved in 83% of the cases. Higher standard of mitigations had been achieved. Otherwise, it was not possible in 83%. A better framework of preparing conditions and legal agreements to govern future operation of the project had been provided in 72% of the cases. Environmental concern had been incorporated from an earlier stage in the design in the 61% of cases. Better design making had been achieved in 61%, and a more systematic and structured framework for analysis, more objective and credible information, increased rigor in the evaluation, and the environmental credibility of the developer had been enhanced in 61% of the cases. So in all the cases, we could see that there is a lot of benefits of the EIA in these projects. Environmentally sensitive areas had been avoided through project resetting and redesigning in 56% of the cases. So this just gives us the success of how in these 18 projects, and some of the recommendations which this study was that we need to improve the screening process. We need to do the giant scoping, in the term of reference and content of the EIA should be carefully designed. New guidance on standard expected for technical assessment of specific type of development, including waste disposal, water shortage, mineral extraction, road development, and tourism. Greater public involvement is required, has been recommended. Clear definition of mitigation standard is required. A formal requirement to reduce monitoring. The study concludes that requirements to monitor the consequences of decisions and the subsequent success or failure of the mitigation measures would greatly enhance the effectiveness. And this, we earlier discussed that this is one of the biggest challenge in most of the projects, that the monitoring and the follow-up plan is not provided very rigorously. And in most of the cases, the EIA provides a lot of commitments and a very rosy picture of the compliance. But unfortunately, once the project is started, a lot of very important consideration of the mitigations are sacrificed. Now the cost and the benefits, for example, the environmental values such as the value of clean air and water, unspoiled wilderness, ecological balance, diversity, these are benefits. Different people will put different evaluation on these. The economic consultant who undertakes such evaluation must be using the judgment, and so there are many ways to assess these. So ladies and gentlemen, this was the first lecture of the day on the introduction to the environmental impact assessment, and I believe that we will discuss something like 8 to 10 lectures in the IEA series. And we, at the end of the presentation, we will also discuss a few reports in terms of maybe some infrastructure development, or maybe some road and highway development. Now, this is very interesting that even in the mega projects in Pakistan, like motorway, we had not been in M1 and M2. We have not done the EIA in timely manner, and that could lead to very big questions on the credibility of the project, and we could see a very bad design, and the motorway was passing through the most difficult part of Kalar Kahar, which I think would have not been the case if the project was properly analyzed for environmental assessment before we start. So this is becoming now very important for all the policymakers and for the proponents of the projects, both in public and private sector, that the project should have a properly developed EIA or environmental assessment, and this should be properly reviewed and consulted with the public, and then through the whole process, it should be then leading us to the approval or not approval of the project. So thank you very much, and we finish the lecture of the day, and